Hey folks, it's James, and this is a full hybrid design and rendering masterclass, and I develop this workflow and teach it in my live draw-along workshop for any time-challenged designer who sometimes needs a fast and reliable way to design and create presentation-worthy sketches of those designs at the same time. This is an actual masterclass I teach, so it's longer than my usual videos because I want to show you exactly how I work when, say, a client meeting moves up and I only have an hour or two to produce a compelling presentation. So if you have ever been in that same spot, grab your iPad, download the original Procreate file I made for this masterclass so you can follow along, and get ready to learn a job-winning design and presentation workflow you can use to win your very next project. We're going to launch a new canvas, 11 by 17 by 300 DPI, and that's just sort of my comfort canvas, my safety canvas. And then, yeah, right. And let's go to Garage Edition 1, 2, and 3. Let's bring in Garage Edition 1 first, and then I'm just going to make it. I don't know what it is about the iPad screen. I don't like to work all the way to the edges. So as dumb as it sounds, I'm going to go into the uniform move and transform, and I'm just going to reduce the size a little bit. It won't lose any resolution, and because again we're on 11 by 17, so that's a good thing. And then let's go in and let's duplicate this. That's the big thing I forgot to do. And I'm going to go a step further and eliminate the first two photographs we didn't use, and that's a right to left swipe and a delete, right? So it's, this is sort of an insider tip. We're just trying to think of the iPad always as the same thing as our desktop. And that's why you see me, I would have had two photographs, just to make sure I didn't mess one up. And now with the top one highlighted, let's go back to our curves. It was curves I used, right? Let's go back to curves. And all our goal is to see more edges, because later on we're going to come back and we're actually going to use this photograph. That's the heart and soul of this approach, is you're using the photograph for your actual design drawing later on at the restaurant. And that's why our iPad drawing style is like ever so slightly photographic, or at least photoshopic, because we have to, we can't start our hen scratch, and our Francis Ching sketches over a photograph, not with the same effect, right? So if you recall, we went to gamma first and we just kind of lightened it, and I went as far as I could. But the weird thing about this, and I don't really know how to use it, but if you grab this curve at some point, it's going to lighten just the middle tones. And so in a way you can even I can take the dark tone, the lightest tones back, but it's really these middle tones I'm looking for, okay? So I'm going to make sure I can see those edges as clearly as possible without worrying about the beauty of the photograph. And that's about as good as I can get. I can see every line that I need to access, okay? And so let's go back to our wrench menu and turn drawing guide on again. And don't get me wrong, I might have gone overboard with my lightning there. We'll see how it works out. So now I'm going to go to I've got the grid there for reference. Now I'm going to go to my move and transform, and I'm going to immediately go to distort, okay? Because I need maximum freedom, short of warping the darn thing. I need maximum freedom to be able to influence each corner. And it looks pretty straightforward. I think I just have to pretty much take this corner and start moving it over, and that really trues up the whole thing. That is way good enough for government work, okay? So let's reverse engineer the perspective, and just for the heck of it, let's add a layer. It's entirely up to your personal style, but when I can remember to, I'll usually just add a layer to stay out of trouble later somehow. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually draw on this new layer. We're not going to add trace or anything because we want to save time. And I'm going to go back to my classic favorite red pen. I'm just going to pick a dark red. And then I'm going to come out and I'm going to pick just like a fine tip or a technical pen's usually the one that I like. And let's go ahead and scratch it a little bit. Hey, just a quick interruption. Every step of the process inside this video is time-stamped below. So hover your mouse over the timeline to jump right to the part you need, or to the part where you had to leave off for dinner. And don't forget to leave your questions in the comments below. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn off this annoying grid. You're welcome to leave it on if you want, but this will show you a little bit better. And you notice I'm using a kind of a thin line. It's not about presentation yet. So I'll use my 2-finger tap and back out of that. And now what I'm going to do is just move this thing. If you remember me telling you that I'm constantly moving my iPad around and my image around, because my hand really works best in exactly this way. When I'm drawing, this is the best thing that, the best direction for my drawing. I don't know if you guys have the same thing, And so I'll just set it up. And I'm going to start up here, and I'm just going to pull down, and I'm going to ignore this part. I've got my pen down, so I don't have to worry about remembering to. And I'm just going to concentrate right along the building in the photograph and get as close as I can to perspective, like literally trace one of these important perspectival lines. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to keep looking for the lines I can trust, like the bottom of the gutter. I'm just going to pull out. That's actually too fat to see. I'm going to make it a little thinner. I pull out, and I hold the end. I forget about the pencil tip, and I just look over here. And then I'm like, yeah, that's about right. And so let's do one more at max, okay? And it's a little harder to see, but down here is the foundation line. So I'm going to come along the bottom of the window, bottom of the foundation. And remember, I'm not even looking here, and if you could see me right now, you would see that I'm telling you the truth. I'm just looking here, and I release. And now I can look over here and say, well, son of a gun, that's going to be one of my vanishing points. That's cool. All right, so let's go. We're going to go the other way now, and I'm going to go to this big, bad, obvious first line and just stretch it out there. And notice that it's no, let's see, I'm going to show you a little bit better. Remember how we said nothing beyond this wall of the drawing will be recorded by Procreate? So I don't have to worry. I'm just going to go to this line and keep going. What I'm more worried about is the accuracy up here. So here I go. I'm going to pull out, and I have confidence. Without even looking down here, I know I set it up so I could pull out there, and I'm going to release. And then that's going to go as low as I can, but still make sense, and come here and line it up along the edge right there, okay? And then I'll release. And we knew ahead of time that we weren't going to be able, our vanishing point wasn't going to cross here because it's just too far off the page. But you'll see in a second how we solve for that, okay? So let's go to the wrench menu once again. And let's go to the drawing guide and turn it on. And this time, instead of boring 2D, let's go to perspective drawing guide. And if you recall from, I think it was week 1, what we now do is we can manipulate the drawing any way we want, but the moment we tap our pencil down, it's going to want to place one of the vanishing points. So I want that, and even if I miss, I'm going to tap and hold down, and let's see, I'm going to tap and hold, actually not hold, I'm just going to tap. But if I miss, my point was that I can tap and hold on this dot and just wait until it breaks free and then move it over, okay? And I'm going to try and find that second vanishing point, and when it goes off the page, and this is my big moment to show you, when it goes off the page, the reason you don't have to worry about it is just grab a piece of paper and just sort of line it up here. In fact, 2 pieces of paper will do it an even better job. Just dumb things around your office and just sort of get a sense for how far you're going to have to be out there. Because you're going to be left off into all this gray matter. So I'm just going to tap here. Okay, And that's my, I believe that's my second vanishing point. There's a chance, no, you know what? I accidentally created one earlier, so I'm going to tap and hold on the one I accidentally created. And actually, I'm just going to tap it once, and then I'm going to delete it, okay? So now I have 2 vanishing points. But now let's go and let's, in fact, do our classic add a roll, a trace, just to really extend that analogy. I mean, I do it every day, but it really hits home with that analogy about this being like your desktop. And I'm going to go, instead of being fancy, even though we know that skill, I'm going to go into the layer and tap fill layer. And now everything goes away because it's pure opaque. And I'm going to tap the transparency mode here, the blending mode icon, and go to opacity and just get a nice, I need to see just enough back there that I can design over it. But, you know, that's up to you guys what your taste is, right? And I think I will, at this point, I'll turn the grid off because we don't need it yet. It could help. Maybe I'll keep it on. And now I'm going to add a layer above that layer of trace. And this is going to be where the rubber meets the road. Now that takes 10 minutes in class, maybe even 15. But when you get good at this, that's 3 minutes, 1.5 to 3 minutes, everything we just did. Okay. Now I'm going to go to black.
This is awesome.
I'm going to go to black instead of my usual red. And really, my first step is just messy, you know. There's a couple of different ways I do that. Sometimes it totally depends on my mood. Sometimes I'll just like, give me that ballpoint pen feeling, you know. And I'm sort of glad I left the perspective grid on because I'm drawing freehand, but in the same shape as the perspective grid, okay? And so I think for this, I've got the benefit of thinking through this a little more than you guys because I've been thinking about it for a week. But I'm going to start with like a pass through. I'm going to let them maintain this breezy connection through here, and they can get to the other side of the property through there too. You know, it's just a classic New England-y thing. And then I'm going to come out, and I do a lot of this proportional stuff. I know that this is roughly 9 feet, the datum of the gutters. And so I'll just kind of like draw squares. I'm like, okay, that's 9, that's 18. And I don't know what this thing has to be. I'm trying to, in my thinking, like I try to design things that have value for the next owner after the current client. You know, and I tell them I'm trying to protect their investment, you know, and but it's a great way to get them to do what you want instead of what they want. So I really am being.
I like this. This is useful.
Really, yeah, man. You guys, come on. We got to talk business too. Let's go, Ted. You're gonna pipe in when you're ready. You know. No, I mean, my God, we're
so obsessed.
We're all trying to survive, right? And just you don't get to be Bjarke Ingels or any. Who's my favorite woman from Chicago that does all those warped skyscrapers and things?
Oh, Jeannie?
Yeah. Jean Gang. Right? So you don't get to be those people, by just agreeing to do whatever your clients want, right? So anyway, if this is a air passage, and this is just a double, let's say that's an 18-foot door, so you can do 2 cars in the future, right? So this gives me I guess what I was saying earlier was that this gives me an excuse to do those glass garage doors that are also insulated. And so then if it's a workshop, I always think, well, what kind of workshop would I like, before my client sets me straight, So, that would just be filled with north light, and it'd be an awesome place to work. So I'm just going to go with that, because we want to save time. And as I said, as I was sketching, I was kind of following these suggested lines down here without any repercussion, okay? But now I could go to my client with just that, right? Or there's a couple of things that I typically do. I would, let's say I add another sheet of, at this point, this is another trick too. If you go to your line of your layer of trace, right, and hold it down and see if this is compatible with your guys' drawing style. So if I'll release it, and now every new layer gets kind of buried, and so I'm not overly influenced, by the next thought, you know what I mean? So I'm going to go in, layer 6 is going to be my new drawing layer above the tracing paper that we created. Remember, we're dragging this tracing paper around to save time. So layer 6 is going to be my next drawing layer, and this one I am going to do in red so we can see each other what we're doing. So I'll tap red, and I'll go back to that layer, and now is when I finally activate Drawing Assist. Because remember, Drawing Assist is not normally there until you activate it, until you tell the iPad, by the way, on this project we're going to do some Drawing Assist. So it's turned on. And now I'm going to go to some kind of sharp. Let's go to Narendra pencil for the heck of it, in honor of Mr. Narendra. And now I can come in here and really sharpen this up real fast. So let's see, I'll double check, and I'll go back, and I've got my Narendra, and I'll just go like boom. I'll start actually adding these lines where they belong. And if you watch my iPad for a second, sometimes when you get close to perfect horizontal, the perspective guide gets a little dicey. So watch what happens if sometimes it wants to draw horizontally first. I didn't do anything then, but just sort of keep in mind, sort of head your pencil in the way that you know it should be going, and that should handle it. And what's cool about this whole technology is that it always does, it's doing the perspective, but it also always does true horizontals and true, true verticals. So you use that to your advantage, and especially when you're doing a drawing and trying to get it fudged out fast. And so now I'll just put in that, I'm basically going to go around and complete this design in a fraction of the time it would have taken me to do it in SketchUp or Revit. At least, maybe not you guys, but it would take me. And so, you too? Sure. You too? Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to, so I can add some, I'm here, I'm going to turn my tracing paper layer way up so you guys can see this better. So once you get to this point, you're home free. It's like you're back with a pencil in 5th grade again. So now you can do all your, I'm turning the pencil width way down. And even though it's red, I'm definitely going to desaturate it later, so it's going to look like a pencil drawing. So I'm not wasting any motion. I'm saying, well, I've got to show them. It's going to be, cedar shake singles or Tesla roof or something. So it's not wasted effort. And then I'm going to estimate. So let's see. There's this design that's going on where the windows and things are trying to come up to the gutter level, so I'll try and, will I imitate that? Yeah, I don't know. No, I'm going to give it like an 18-inch header at least, because that's going to be a huge double door. And now I'm going to come down, and this is super basic. I apologize, but it's now there I go. I'm getting into my horizontal problem. What I'm trying to do is just, this is like a classic thing where, wow, what happened? That thing, even when you're modeling on a computer, you kind of use your experience to guess thicknesses, and then later on the people on your team can actually, the kids that need to learn about thicknesses and the kids that need to learn that you can actually observe the world during the day and become a better designer because you observe the world.
You can?
Right? I mean, imagine, I had a boss once that said, everybody's got to buy a tape measure and take it everywhere you go and measure everything. Mm-hmm. And it was so helpful. So what happened a second ago was I realized, despite my warning that, make sure you are always drawing, I got to go back, make sure you're following your perspective, I actually drew a horizontal line down there, so I had to erase that. So here's my new perspectival line, because it was throwing off my, you can see a couple of things have been thrown off now, like that should have been down there. But even this technique could be a fun, right? Like, instead of me taking it so seriously, I suddenly realized, well, wait a second, man, I got to get done, and it looks kind of cool anyway. So let me go with this. I don't know. It's sort of it's definitely an architect style, and then you don't even have to get your proportions right, because it's just this energy thing that you're going for, And then it turns out I'm having so much fun at Starbucks that I start accidentally completing the rest of the house, because that's going to make their house seem like my drawing, and they're going to trust the drawing even more, And so, I'm sort of kidding about that, but the point I'm trying to make is how awesome it is that all of this perspective, except for these sloped roofs, but I'm avoiding them, but all of this perspective is like being provided for you by, Procreate. And so you can really fly through this. Now you can't change this because it's built, but there's that other thing in design, I don't know if you guys are the same, where sometimes you just want to repeat things so you get them in your system, and it's in your DNA now, right? And so I'm like, all right, well, that's good. These verticals that don't immediately fit this new mode of working, this perspective, do that trick. You just do that trick where I'll start here and I'll pull it and I'll pause, and then it's going to come down like that. So there's another thing that we studied in week 1. So I know I'm going to end up here, so I'm just going to pull out, and now that time it didn't work, so I'm going to pull out and hold, and that time it worked. And I got that, and I got that. All right, and then there's a nice little gutter detail we got to put in, and I'll make sure that that's in there. And there's the rest of the house back here, and whatever else you have to do. And we're just doing the shorthand version of this tonight, but you guys will, you'll develop your own style, and so I'll stop there. Let's say we get that far, and there's one last diagonal that I've got to provide here, and so I'm going to come down here and hold, and there's another thing which is really effective in these renderings. If you can sort of suggest the interiors, so I'm moving a line back. It's probably further than it would go in real life, but I'm going to move it to there, and this is pure emotion. This is pure salesmanship, because this is going to end up being really helpful later when we do our little night view, or whatever we do. Oh, now that's interesting. Now here you saw me fighting that line. I was like trying to get it over here, but this is the actual perspective. So it's a good example of, Procreate's watching out for you. It's like, sorry, I can't let you do that. You used to draw like that, but not anymore. And so, let the thing work for you. And so this is just the absolute sketchiest version of a possible. It's always so nice to see that glowing wood inside of an evening sketch or something like that. So I'll stop there. Now, one of the reasons that I used this photograph with you guys today is because I did not want to have a pat process ready. I wanted you to see how I literally have to think in real time about doing this, and that's why it's so fun to connect with you guys and design experiences you've had, right? So I'm looking at this, and I know that I'm going to want, eventually I'm going to blend that photograph back in, right? So I think I'll go into layers, and another thing, Jeff, we're talking about is how the things we learned in week 1 and week 2 are now the kind of DNA and the go-to heartbeats that we need for these new skills. So I'm gonna duplicate this image just to protect it, and I'm going to take the duplicate and I'm going to run it up the flagpole to just under the trace, And that is for pure marketing reasons, because I'm like, okay, is this going to work? I need to see what my deliverable is going to be, so I have to keep design in mind, but also like deliverable, because I got to get results, in just an hour. So I'm gonna reduce the tracing paper opacity, so I can begin to see like how I'm going to do this, because I'm going from design now to presentation. So I'm going to go back first of all to the layer that we did in red. Even though it's kind of cool, we can, you can see why I'm doing red, because it gives you that immediate contrast in design, and because you have this amazing capacity to go back and just turn anything red into immediately black. So I'm in the red layer. I went to hue, saturation, and brightness, and I'm going to desaturate, and I'm going to darken, all in one fell swoop. And now that's a little difficult to see, so I'll turn the tracing paper back up a little bit so I can see that a little better, right? And I'll probably end up, for a client, I'll probably end up somewhere about there, when this gets printed out by 11/17. I'll say, well, yeah, let them see their old house, and then we'll have this new funky stuff just kind of blended in like that, right? So it's a strategy, and everyone's got their own correct level of what would you call it, transparency. But humor me for the moment. Let's go back, and as I said, you make this up as you go. And so I'm going to hold down on the inserted image so that it isolates itself, okay? And we know these are dark, but I'm just for starters, I'm going to say, well, let me make, I'm going to need like 4 or 5 colors for this really quick rendering. And I don't know what they are yet, except when I look around, well, there's gray, there's another gray, and there's black, and there's the sky or whatever. So it's because it's easy to do, I'm just going to go to palettes, all right? And this won't be every job, but let's say the one you really do need to present an image from. And I'm just going to add a palette up here. So I'm going to hit that button, and I'm going to say create new palette. Okay. And there it is. And now, for God knows why, but the eyedropper is actually here, at least in my settings, and I hope yours too. So I'm going to bring the pencil all the way over this little square. Now that square, I think, has to be, you have to be in brushes for that square to appear, or one of these first 3 things. So if it doesn't appear, just make sure you're in brushes. And I'm going to tap this, and there my eyedropper just appeared. And I'm going to, oops, it goes away, so I'll tap it again. It disappeared. Now notice what's happening is the eyedropper is turning whatever color I drag it over. So I'm going to go for like a neutral, in sun, their existing house when it's in the sun. And I'll pick one, it's pretty light, and I'll go with that. Now I'll tap the palette button again, the color button, and I'll just add that color. All I have to do, I've already picked it over here, I just tap on the top corner, and I've got my first color. So now I'll go back and tap the palette again. And let's say, well, I need a neutral color. I need a, it's still in sun, but it's further away. All right, so that's my second. I'm going to go with 3 grays, let's say, of this thing. And so I'm going to tap that, and I'll add that here. And as I look at that, as I look at these two, I realize, I really need to get this highlight gray here, because I don't have anything light, so I got to get a dynamic range of things. So I'm going to go back to the dropper, and I'm going to drag it over, and I'm going to get the lightest gray I can find. So that's sort of my highlight color. And then I'll press, and now it's too late. I wish I had it over there, but so what? Not a big deal. And I'm in the actual photograph. I'm going to go to adjustments, and I'll go to our favorite curves. And it's like the most unscientific thing you've ever done. It's like, what in the world? Which one looks best, And so there's kind of a flat winter thing. That's kind of cool. you know. So, and your client really isn't going to care what kind of, he's going to like, wow, a purple sky, that's so cool. And let's start adding some, so we can make sense of this. Let's add some colors to our addition, okay? So I need just the slightest bit of white, otherwise we're not going to see what we're doing. And so now colors you always want, when you're doing quick renderings like this, if you can remember, you always want your drawing layer or the actual thing that's defining edges to be at the very top of the layer stack. And that's so that those lines will show up as much or as little as you want, but you'll have the choice to have them show up. So I'm always going to be adding color below that layer. So you'll see me working below that layer with these color things, but above the the tracing paper layer. So let's add a layer now. And now the next principle of quick drawing is, this is my technique, you guys can do whatever you want, but is work from large to small, okay? So the only part of this drawing that I've impacted is this, and the largest part is the mass itself, and the daylight will come through. Actually, I should have drawn the underside of that roof, so I'll estimate that when I do this. So I'm going to go with the largest area, and I'm going to go with that middle gray that we created, okay? And I'm going to come over here and hit the selection tool. And I've got freehand because I've got a freehand shape, otherwise I'd use rectangle. So my freehand is activated, and I'm going to come in here. And remember, it doesn't matter that I'm looking at a pencil layer because there below it is the layer we're working on. So I'll come in here, freehand, and I'll just tap my way around, and this is just, as you all have discovered, imagine trying to shade this thing versus tapping your way around. This is just such a luxury, and so fast, and it creates this uniform sort of digital image. So now we know we're going to add windows later. So I don't need to make that. Well, you know what? I want to see the woods beyond. So this first layer of mine, I don't want it to cover that rectangle for the woods, which is the window on the other side. So I'm going to go to remove for that. And remove means whatever shape I complete will be removed from what is alive and effectable. So the marching ants are the things that are going to protect the image. So I'm just going to come in and do a real simple square, not worry about these mullions or anything. And sure enough, that has been removed from the area affected. And we're gonna line these walls with a lighter color, a warmer color. So I'll stay away from those. I've got my color selected. The roof is going to be the same, at least for starters. And now I'm going to go back to the layer that I'm on, and I'm going to tap fill. Okay? And remember how we were saying that these weird colors will manifest? You have no idea. Like, what? That is no way that's the color I picked, right? But there it is. And so what does that need? Well, this now comes the quick reality check. Just take the tracing paper away, and now you're in that layer of color. So just go over to adjustments, and as I said, all of this would have been half an hour work in the Starbucks, but it takes longer to make sure everybody gets this, which I love doing. So now I'm just going to move these around. Okay, well, it's way too saturated. And part of that was when we adjusted the photograph. So we need to be more fair to ourselves. And you can get really specific, like technically this dark gray is the color of anything on this building that's away, that's facing in this direction. So one could say, well, this color should be this dark gray, at least for starters. But this is getting a lot of light from the site, and so it's light, to be lighter makes sense. But more importantly, it's this incredible thing where we can adjust this. I can adjust that color 2 weeks from now or a year from now, so it's no problem. So all I'm doing is trying to get some stuff down. And I need a good color for that roof now. So remember, we're working from large to small. And so I'm like, okay, well, this is good. It's kind of I think it's a Tesla roof. And we didn't actually do a roof before, but let's do one now. So I'll go into the palettes. I'm not sure I needed to in sequence-wise, but now I'll go over to the eyedropper, and I'll move it down, and I'll pick up, a neutral-ish gray, or it's probably going to end up being dark over there, so I'll go with dark. It's like this beautiful blue-gray kind of thing. And two-finger tweak to get back. And now I'll go to my image here. Remember, one color per layer. I'm not sure I emphasized this yet, but because of that adjustability, I keep each color on its own layer, which just makes adjusting them and recognizing them so much faster later on. So it's not a bad practice. So I'm going to go to a new layer. I've got my blue picked. And by the way, I forgot to add it to the palette. So I'm tapping that blue, and up comes my palette, and now I'm just going to add it to the palette. And I don't need all these colors, so I can add it some safe distance away. And all I do is tap in a square, and there it is. So for future reference. So now I come back, and remember, we're on our new layer. This is our second color we've done. I go to Selection, and I'm going to basically recreate the same shape. Because I'm looking at my watch, I'm getting nervous. And that worked out. And this time I'm going to save time, and I'm going to do that trick we learned in class and tap and hold for the briefest second the color and just drag it down and release it. Okay? And so, as normal, reality check. Like, I know, the design isn't finished, the drawing isn't finished, but I'm like, whoa, I better adjust that real fast, And I don't know necessarily where I'm adjusting it, and but I know that it's got to be lighter just to look. Sometimes it just has to look good against what's in the background, and it's that simple. So I still want a little blue in it. I should show you what I'm doing. I still want a little blue in it because this, to me, has a lot of blue right there. And this is the renderer part of me talking, so you guys are getting the 2-for-1 treatment tonight. All right, so we've got our 3 big areas. And now, what's the next biggest area? Well, I think it's this warm, glowing interior. Okay, so I'm going to go and add a layer, and I can move a little quicker now. And I'll tap color, and just from experience, I know that there's this bizarre thing where a warm interior is really a crazy, at least for starters, it's like a crazy orange. You would think it would be a light yellow, but it's a crazy orange for warmth. And so I'll go back and check that I'm on a new layer. And I'm going to go to my selection tool, and I need to be very freehand this time. And I'm going to work my way around everything inside of the exterior frame of the garage door. The mullions are a different thing, which we're going to deal with in a super fun way. And I'm also going to have this, even though I didn't draw it, I'm going to have the underside of this nice New England connection, right? And I'm just going to eyeball it. I don't know for a fact where it is because I didn't construct it. And that's waiting for us. You guys don't have to do this, but just for clarity, I'll turn on the white again, my layer of trace, so you can see better. So I've got this area selected, the interior area selected, but it's too much interior area selected. Don't tap this quickly, but if you press, you can bring back all of that context menu at the bottom. So if I tap, it'll turn off, so I'm going to be careful about that. But if I just tap and hold, even while the ants are marching, it's going to bring this back. And so I'll go to remove this time, and I'll tap my way around this. And there we go. And now that's safe, okay? So now this is it. I don't know if anybody ever did any spray painting or silk screening, but really it's such a similar process where we're doing almost like wood. I think of them as paper cutouts as Matisse. So remember, I'm talking about it. I'm going to go to fill layer, and there's my fill, and it's way too insane. I know that. I'm going to turn off the tracing paper, but it's not far off from sometimes when, sun is inside, and all I have to do, by the way, is go to good old adjustments, and I don't have to know anything about color. I just have to know about life. And I'm like, wait, yeah, okay, I remember that. I've seen things like that, There's sun coming in, right? So, whatever you guys do, I'll stop there, because remember, I want to sell this to my clients. So, like, I might even jack up that and make it a little juicier, right? So that's fine. And now let's what's left to do? Well, we need, let's see, at the very minimum, let's put in the glass that we are so hopeful that they'll use, and then the mullions. So I'll start with the glass, and this will be my next biggest layer. And so I'll add that. And there's no rule that it has to be absolutely perfectly memorable as a layer, that one is bigger than the other and they're all in order. But, it's a good place to start. And so I'll go to a very light blue, always be adjusted later. And I'll go to my selection tool. And really, now I'm coming over the warm area, remember, but I have transparency to help me. So I'm in freehand. I'm going to go right over that entire area, the warm interior, the view to the woods, the whole shebang. I'm going to add my blue to that. I'm going to freak out, and then I'm going to realize, oh, you son of a gun, when I take that down, I get the hazy kind of looking through in winter to the thing beyond. And now I can look at this. Remember how I could adjust this even up to a year from now? Well, I've just added glass to it, so what am I going to want to do? Well, I want to make it, sexier than that. So I'm going to go back to hue, saturation, and brightness and pump up the volume. And there we go. And now what's left is I've got those mullions. So let's go again to the top of the color layer stack and add a layer. And there's a couple of ways to do these. We're going to start with, say, well, actually the house has got black, come to think of it. So let's start with a black. I wouldn't mind being able to see things a little better, but I'm going to go with a charcoal. I don't know if you guys have one. It's not pure black. I'm not sure why. And then I'm going to go to my flat marker, okay? And I'm going to test that I'm in that nice new layer. For clarity's sake, I'm going to turn my tracing paper back on, and you guys might even do the same. And as long as my layer is blue, I know where I am. Now I'm going to go to the flat marker and use iPad drawing for everything it's worth. So I'm going to just sort of eyeball, these mullions and this gauge over here, right? And I don't have to get it right, but let's start there. And I'm just going to down here, I'm going to do this, and then I might do one here and just hold it. Remember that hold trick. And I'm like, well, yeah, look, I got lucky. That worked. And I don't care that it's perfectly filled in. I think I'm going to go a little thinner, just for safe reasons. I put down, I pull, I hold, and this one I'm going to, I can always lighten these in adjustments, but I'll draw that one maybe a little lighter. And this whole bottom panel, now I can, add clarity to this because it seemed like it was wood before, but it's not. And this immediately tells me, like, whoa, back off, fella. This is getting pretty intense, right? Mm-hmm. So I think I may have designed these things too fat, but you get the idea. We were working fast. And so it can also tell me that they shouldn't be black, and it shouldn't be the first thing somebody sees when they come to your house. So that's already a kind of a design thing. And it's especially the kind of design thing you want to start talking to your client about, right? And what would that be like if it was, digital? It'd be terrible, right? computer realism. So that's too intense. So I'm gonna turn down the black that I just did a little bit, and I'm still in that layer, right? So I'll go to. I always prefer to keep it fully opaque, but work over here if I need something lighter. And this is the beauty of it. I mean, look at this. Suddenly it goes from something that I'm nervous about to something I'm like, yeah, okay, I could see them liking it. And then maybe the roof is a little too, I have to turn off the tracing paper to see where we are so far. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because it does have to be black again once the tracing paper is turned off. So I'm going to go back and make sure I'm in that layer. And I'm going to go a little darker until it's like, yeah, that's about right, you know. And I still have reservations as a designer. I still have reservations that, you know, obviously I made it look too open, right? And it's oddly visible to anybody that's out here, you know, a guest arriving for the first time. So I'm not claiming that it's perfect, you know. And maybe it's as simple. It's almost like I set this up, but I swear I didn't. Maybe it's as simple as, well, it wasn't exactly what, but I'm going to add an opaque panel to that glass, okay? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go with our gray. And this is great to be able to show you guys all this stuff. So I need that gray, right? But am I going to find it in the palette anymore? I don't care. It's too slow. So I'm going to go just back over to Mr. Eyedropper and pop Mr. Eyedrop over the gray. And now gray is loaded, so I can save time. And what were we going to do? I forget. Now there was something about
filling those panels.
Filling the panels. Thank you. So now I can go do this, and you know, rectangle might even work. And I'm working fast, but I'm going to stick with freehand. And let's go to this. And you know, and I don't have to worry about the mullions being covered up because suddenly it's like this. And they're like, yeah, well, you know what, but maybe that should be the darker color. Now, I know this is strange. Okay, you guys, we can all work together. But, you know, maybe it needs to be the dark color, and it has to be all the way unsaturated, and, you know, and that's something. And then, you know, the mullions are getting in the way at this point, right? So I'm going to unassist it, otherwise the eraser is going to get jerked around by drawing assist. And I'm just going to go to, you know, a tiny flat marker, just sort of clean things up, and you know, I can get rid of stuff that I did without messing up the whole layer. And I don't have to worry about, because it's a rough drawing when you get up close to it, and I'll make this point in a second another way, I can just sort of like, yeah, it's not a big deal, you know, my lines are crossing each other, some of them are too far, but it's all going to add to the charm of this drawing. And I, you know, hopefully I'm not just saying that, but I think your client, look how much more fun this is already than watching somebody do all this than watching somebody change something in Revit, right? Now let's say that you are really, okay, I need to make sure that they told me specifically, no, I will never put anything there because we really need that driveway turnaround. And then I'm like, I can fix that. So this is the next biggest idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly, I've got 15 more minutes before the meeting, I'm going to put a strip of planting here and a single car or 1.5 cars there for UPS to pull into and K-turn. And then I'm going to have the driveway go out. And because I have snow, well, it's still an important thing I have to make my client understand. So I'm just going to go ahead and cheat, and I'm going to add a layer. Let's turn on the white again so we can see what we're doing. I'm going to make sure I tap, whenever I hit the plus button, I'm going to add a layer on top of the currently active layer, okay? So I'm going to add a layer, and I really don't know what color. I think it doesn't matter, so I'll just stick with the same color that's there. I'll go back to freehand, and this is the thing that I just love doing, and we've started to talk about it, but I love drawing with the selection tool. It's so freeing, And I'm going to start here. This is a little scary. That's not a very big space to jump with the closure tool. It sometimes, snaps there that you don't want to, but let's try it anyway. I'm going to start there. I'm going to come here, and this is their drive-through. I'm going to pop there, and I'm going to go ahead for now and come all the way out. And here, Heather, is one time where you do want to be freehand. And so I'll just kind of wiggle down here. And then because of this rubber band cool thing going on, I can sort of stretch it out here and say, let's go this far, in perspective, mind you. So I go that far, it takes anchor, and now I come back towards the building, and I wrap around this little hill that's on the property, and then here, and then I'm going to come all the way back here and then up, okay? And this is what I love to do, make these bold changes all of a sudden. So I'll go into my layer and I'll hit fill, and I think why I like it so much is because obviously it's the wrong color. So while I'm talking, I'm going to go to adjustments. And why I like it so much is because with this technique, it comes together so quickly, the design, once you have that kind of strategy, that sort of chess game figured out. And, there's a point at which you might even say, well, you guys loved that one driveway that we saw that was almost green, and so you've got color on your side again. I'm going to keep going with this kind of violet thing. But the important thing is really I shouldn't be messing too much, because the minute I turn this layer off is when I get the truth. Okay, so because I remember to do that, I'm like, whoa, I cannot do that. So I'm going to go with, obviously darker, and I have to think of this in terms of maybe here's this dark shadow in the snow. I still have to use this photograph, so I'll just play around somewhere in that zone, okay? Because I want it to be, and a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go back and forth between the brightest and the darkest and just see basically what it wants to be, and I hope you'll agree that it wants to be dark, right? So it wants to kind of, like if it's bright, it's taking attention away from this and it looks like an object. But if it's dark, it sits down. There's no science to this, by the way. This is just me guessing. But if it's dark, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's working for me, right? Because that shadow's dark. And so I got that part, right? And we still have the tracing paper off. Now, mind you, what I generally do with a final is, and really this is all about these skills. A lot of times, at the very end, I'll move the tracing paper all the way to the top. We don't know that we're going to do it yet, but let's just do it together. Let's go all the way to the top, and mine's sticking for some reason. So I'm going to go under the pencil layer, and then what I'll do is I'll kind of, in those last seconds before I head into the copy machine, I'll just adjust this and say, at what point does the pencil rendering still read? And look at that, you guys. How cool is this? At what point does the pencil rendering read? And all because of the opacity of the trace. Do I want it to be more like a photograph and go for that? Or do I want the client to literally know it was a pencil hybrid that I did on top of their house because of the fascination that people have, with that, whatever architects do, right? I mean, what I'm about to show you, but so effective. Look how the sky is short of my frame, and I'm so into frames. I'm like, I'm getting super compulsive at the end, just before a project. I have to take it in. So I'm just gonna go crazy. I'm gonna go back to the image itself, all right? And what I'm going to do is going to mess around with the photograph a little, so I'm going to copy it just to be safe, all right? So here we go, duplication. And now here's the safe copy I can experiment with. I'm going to use this crazy smudge tool, and I'm going to use it in the softest, least offensive way possible, because I don't know if it's going to work, right? And so that's the thing with all this stuff. I use it so rarely, but I do have my absolute favorites that have come to save my butt so often. So I'm in smudge, I'm in airbrush, right? And I don't really know the size, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to push color, just letting you know, I'm going to push color from the photograph up into that zone and then just clean the whole thing up with one quick selection. So nothing has to be fancy. I'm going to turn off the trace, but the skill is so interesting. So I'm going to turn on smudge, and as long as don't forget I'm in the actual fake photo, the duplicated photo layer, and as long as I begin down here, whatever color, this thing is so fascinating, whatever color is at the lowest part of the sponge, or whatever you call it, the smudger, is going to be the thing that's dragged across this whole thing. So I kind of need to start as high as possible, and you'll all see this immediately when you start using it. But look at that. It's just so, who cares that the clouds aren't there? They don't need to be, as long as I place this thing in the right place. And if I get it a little wrong, I erase it. Now look, these trees are going to get smudged, so I'm going to go smaller, and I'm going to smudge away from them. So look, it depends on how crazy you want to get, but I know most of us are pretty crazy. We have to be. So I'm going to finish up the smudge. I'm going to bring some blue up there. This is like, again, pure Bob Ross stuff, right? And it's just like, man, it's working for me. So the photograph already goes beyond the border down here. So I gotta have a couple of options. I could crop the photo itself, okay? And I guess we should do that. No, you know what? I forgot. If we crop the photo, if we literally cut it, well, the other photo is going to show through. So I really need more of a mask. It's kind of a fun thing, but I'm going to go to the very top of the layer stack, and I can even go on top of my line drawing. And I'm going to go to white, okay? And what I'm going to do is the same thing we've been doing. I'm going to just 4 taps of the freehand pencil. I'm going to start in this corner, tap, and tap, and I'm going to follow that frame around and tap there. And that's not what I want to do, because I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No. So I have to invert it. Go ahead, Heather. I keep talking over you.
Okay, no. That's fine. That's fine. You're just making a mask. Did you make another layer?
Yes, I literally made a layer above the drawing. And I'm doing the old mask trick because it's so effective. And I'm going to use the inside the layer command to go fill. All right. And so that gets me part of the way, but I can't go to my client with that. And so I'm going to select every single layer. And remember, I start with any of the layers selected. It doesn't matter. And then I do a left to right swipe to get the other layers in this lighter color blue. And I don't have to do the trace, oddly enough, because the trace is just going to be the trace. It's already a full rectangle. So I'm going to go down the layer order and do these left to rights. Even the ones that I didn't end up using, even the diagram, anything that could get me in trouble later if I don't move it. And what I'm going to do with all of that selected, I'm going to come back to the Move and Transform tool, and I'm just going to center and level up this whole thing, because I'm an architect and I can't stop myself. And so I got it centered, and I can even at this point, let's say that being centered is step one, right? And I suppose I could come up here and true it against the actual edges of the paper. That would have made more sense. Except now that I've lost my gripper somehow. Where is my gripper? It's off screen. Okay. So I can take it up here. I can use the edge of the paper to help me true this thing up if I really want to get crazy, okay? And I do. And so I've got it trued up, and now I'm not messing around with a rotation thing. I can come here, and I might even want a full bleed at this point. Oops. Remember, I'm in distort mode, so I could go into uniform and just decide I want a full bleed for whatever reason. It doesn't matter, but I'm going to go and have some margin, and maybe I have a title block to put on or something. And so I'll tap out of the move and transform, and there's the beginning of my design. And we said before that you could add a site plan from Google Maps there, anything to make it less boring. The last thing I wanted to show you was if it just seems too flat, and I totally get it if it does, add a little bit of, go to each layer, and we'll just do one. I think the driveway is the thing that's potentially the most fake looking, you might say. So we did this in week one, where it takes some artistic insight, I guess you'd call it, but we created a gradient in a rectangular shape. And gradient is an important part, I believe, of this kind of presentation technique. So I'm going to make sure that I'm in the driveway layer by itself. And I'm going to select the layer. And so now the shape of that object is selected and protected, and anything I do will only be on top of that. And I'm going to add, because I'm not bold enough to do it, bareback, I'm going to add a plus sign here and just add some texture to this driveway. And I don't even know what brush I'm going to use. This is where the incredible selections of brushes can be a nightmare, but can also be, once you get a couple of favorites, you're like, oh yeah, I can use this all the time. And my favorite for that is Nicky Roll. And I don't know why, but it's just kind of wacky in a great way. So I could use any color for this, by the way, but I'm just gonna go with that gray again. I'm gonna fix the color after I put it on, but I need a quick color to put on there, and I might want to pick it from another palette. So I know I'm gonna need a lighter gray than that, and I'll pick that. And what I'll do is go back in, so I know I'm in my layer. It's protected in the selection, even though the selection was of the layer underneath it, the new layer is equally protected. And I'll go into Nicky Roll, I'll adjust the brush over here, and I try to usually make it big, and I'll take the opacity way down. And so that's going to give me the maximum chance to make mistakes. I could even go to 31%. And I'm just going to, I need an idea ahead of time what I'm going to do. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it lighter as it gets closer to the garage. I don't know if it's the right instinct, but I think it might work. I'm going to soon find out, okay? So I'm just going to add this texture. I'll do it a little bit crazier for you guys. I can barely see mine, so I have to fix that color, okay? Because I want you guys to see this. So I'm going to go to a very light gray, and let's see if that made a difference. Barely, okay? I guess it made a little bit of difference. So bear with me, because as a renderer, I would be much more finicky about this. But I want you to see that I'm barely touching it. I think the expression we used was that a bug's leg would not be smashed by the pressure. I think it would be very unpleasant for them, though, at the pressure that I'm using at the moment. And I'm just going to sort of randomly add texture, and just, I really don't have a plan, but it just kind of feels good. And if you go too far or you don't like the texture, just all you got to do is use good old 2 fingers, right? And so it's going to make it weirdly more consistent with a photograph. And I don't know why, but it's kind of fun to do. And I don't even know that I had enough of effect, but what's so fun about this whole color thing is now I can go into hue, saturation, and brightness. And I'm always harping about how much I've learned about color and even tone and value from this. So I can make it lighter and see, like, wait, did I use the right instant? Oh, actually it's much better, lighter. And of course I could even go darker too and see if it looks better lighter, but it's all of our independent taste. So I'm happier with that, and I'll turn that off. Let's say that it just seems weird not having a person. Let's say I want to have a person in the shop itself, and also in the crossover between the house and this is the kind of unheated thing that makes you feel like you've gone somewhere during the day. So if you recall, let's create an entourage layer to be safe. And I'm going to put it on top of the drawing layer. So I'm going to go with a new layer on top of the drawing layer. Here goes that. And it really, you hear me pausing. It's really, I'm collecting my thoughts. What I love about this is how you can kind of go methodically and never worry about making a mistake. As long as you've got the strategy right, which is layer everything on its own layer so it can constantly be adjusted and made safe later. So I'm on its own layer. I'm going to go with white just so I can see whatever I do. Is that going to be good? It's hard to say. I can't be sure, but I'm going to start with white, and then we're going to go to the entourage brush, and we are going to look at the people. I'm going to go into the 100. Let's go monotone. Well, they're grayscale or monotone. I'm going to go to the 100 grayscale, so we have the highest potential selection, okay? And remember, if it's highlight, then you don't need to tap it again. It's just loaded as a brush already. And this isn't going to be ideal because I kind of need to see what I'm about to do, but I'm going to sort of look. You can see the preview I'm getting. Now I'm going to put a person like somewhere in this area, okay? So I know I can hold my pencil like this and to the point where it just shows up, and I can pre-size roughly how big that person should be. So let's say I have those 2 people, or maybe there's the homeowner and a dog is in that with a friend for the weekend. I like it. Okay, so I release that. And now it'd be great if I get it close, but I don't need to. I can have it anywhere. I'm just going to put it right in the middle, and I'm going to tap somewhat firmly, okay? And it's never going to come in perfectly opaque, at least not this system that I created. It's going to, you just don't want to tap that hard. Take a chance. So, but don't be distressed by that. All you have to do is, and also, there's always the chance that you lose the gray scale of it, the subtleties of it, but we can at least try a little. Let's duplicate it and get that muscle memory in again. And what's nice about that is you can now look and see, well, did I go too far? Well, I'm going to be, adding a little color over the top of this. Maybe I'll back off a little. Maybe the new top layer you did, you can experiment and say, well, if I back off, it doesn't really that make big a difference, but I'll go to 25% with the layer that I copied. And then I'm going to merge them so I don't have the headache of all these layers of the same thing. I know that I'm not going to adjust it later. So I'm going to tap on the upper layer, and I'm going to go to merge down. So there's other weird commands, and I'm not sure all of that they mean, like combine down. I mean, I've experimented with them, but all you need to know really is merge down, okay? And so now everything's on one layer, so more manageable, and now I can use the selection tool, and I'm going to go back, and now that I see it, it's not really like a homeowner and a weekend friend, because the weekend friend is ignoring the homeowner. So I'm going to make it just the homeowner and the dog, and maybe one other person. Let's make it one other person just for the fun. Let's make it, it is a weekend friend after all. And so I've got 2 people selected, and what I'm going to do is hit the copy and paste command, which is going to put them on their own layer and save the whole layer for reference at any point later on. Now, notice that I've still got my stencil picked as my pencil, so I'm going to undo that just so it's not quite so annoying. And I won't be needing it again, so I'll go back to the architect's brush set and back to my trusty Narender. And let's see, so what we did, we remember we copied it and put them both on their own layer, so now we can turn off the so-called main layer that had all the templates, and let's bring them, we'll do a little muscle memory practice with selection, and we'll just first bring them down together so they look like they're walking together. So I wanted to double check that I'm on that layer. I went into the selection tool, I freehanded it, and now I go to the move tool and bring them down, and so let's say that they're on a walk together with a dog. And I stop and I undo that. Now they're on the same layer, so I don't have to merge them or anything. And now I can get the big picture and hit the move tool again and bring them down into the walkway. And they're probably a little too tall, so I'll go a little less. And now we talked about how we wouldn't necessarily want them in white. I notice I have to bring them back a little more because the man's feet are not on the ground. So we said that you don't have to worry about what color you pick, because I'll just go into adjustments and I'll mess around with the darkness. Now I think we talked about how you can actually color these things. They're actually independent pixels, and you can dye them, so to speak. You can drag a color onto them if you want. I'll just do that for the heck of it. Remember, I'm still in that layer, and I'll go with the glowing color of the room, maybe a tad darker, and I'll just drag it. It's interesting, like if I drag it and drop it on the character, they still keep their sort of intensity. So it can be an interesting way to, even now I can adjust them again. I can make them darker. Let's say I wanted less of that look in them, and I'm not even sure that's such a good look, but I wanted to show you the options. We could go in there and individually color them as well, and that can be very striking. And sometimes all it takes is like some white highlights, or there's some interesting things you can do. If we go pick a white and pick a flat marker, you could come back in very small, and you could just do like the tiniest details, like let's say that her turtleneck was white, and it's a way to, if you need to if you're afraid your things are a little too flat, you can just add a little bit of detail if you have to, if you still have time at Starbucks. And maybe their glasses would have a reflection too to make it look a little more alive. But I show you guys that partly in jest, because I just wanted to show you how cool it is, all the different things you could do. Shadow really enhances the realism of these things. So, you just want to sort of make sense out of the shadow. So you can see it's a very long shadow today. It's coming through this window, And this corner is throwing a very long shadow, and you can see the slightly bluish color. That's the sun is obviously the color of that glass. So we know we can get away with a long shadow. And there's a whole thing about how the shadows follow the rules of perspective too. Like any shadow thrown by a parallel object will also go off to a common vanishing point. But we don't want to get too far in the woods. Suffice it to say that the shadow thrown from this corner is going to come at this kind of an angle parallel to this. And so let's do the fun shadow thing. Let's put the shadow under these people. Actually, let's put the shadow under the line drawing, because we don't want it to, if there were a line drawing there, we don't want it to affect anything. And I'm going to leave off the tracing paper just to demonstrate you guys. And I'm going to create just a shadow layer by itself. And we're going to hit, well, we'll do it in a second. So we've got that shadow layer, and I want to go find what I call a gray-violet, because you remember how we were talking about having a little, the sky has a little violet, and violet's a big seller for some reason. I mean, people love violet, and it just so happens that it's a great, it's sort of across the color spectrum from the warm sun color. And so it has a way of making shadows vibrate even more. So that's a little color theory for you. So instead of black shadows, it may end up black, but I'm going to start with what I would call a gray-violet, okay? And it's going to seem light, but you'll see in a moment why that's not a bad thing. And so I'm going to go back to the selection tool, freehand, and I'm going to, this edge of this addition would cast a sort of diagonal shadow down the face of this building, which is going to really help the owner understand the relationship of the studio to the rest of the building. And so it's kind of a strategic thing. I'm not even worried about the actual, SketchUp angle of the azimuth. I'm just going to make it look good. And to that end, I want it to come all the way across and cross this little piece of the siding too, because I just want it to be dramatic. I want it to tell a story, not necessarily an accurate story. So I'm in my selection tool in freehand. This time I'm going to start up here, and a lot of times the shadow will be the thing that tells you what to do. And I'll come down to this corner where it's going to change course, of course, and become parallel to this wall. And remember, my ultimate diagonal is going to be something like this. So I'm going to come only that far. I'm just going to freehand it and come to that point, and then I'm going to come across. And one of the things I forgot to do was that, one of the components of shade and shadow is that the whole side of the building is also in shadow. We just call it shade. So one of the quickest techniques I know of is I can come right over the building and all the way back to this, and I'm going to go right over the daylight, but I don't have much time left, and there's some really fast techniques I can use. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this entire shape with a shadow, because it's going to include the shade with it. And I'm going to go to the fill tool inside the layer. I'm going to tap the layer and fill. Now that's going to be more or less opaque, right? And it's also lighter than the driveway. So you could be like, James, what's going on? This doesn't make any sense. Well, here comes the power of the multiply blend mode. I'm going to go back into this beautiful gray-violet layer, and I'm going to go into the blend mode, and I'm going to scroll through until it gets to multiply. And who knows why, but look how cool that looks. Now, we've got stuff we've got to do to that, but I'm looking at this shadow here and this shadow here, and I need to find some happy medium. So I'm going to desaturate this violet for starters. Okay. And I'm just going to, I still want a tinge of violet in it, but I'm going to try and get it closer to this family here and still have a contrast with the driveway. So I'm going to stop about there. And now, because my client will be here literally in 3 minutes, I'm just going to go into the eraser, okay? And I'm going to use the eraser first and foremost to lighten the side of the building that's in shade. You know, the shadow is going to be dark, but the shade plays an optical illusion on us, and it's lighter. So I'm just going to come in here, and I don't have a recipe for this. I'm just going to literally kind of reduce the shadow, and I'm especially going to reduce it around the glowing interior, because I really want to feature the glowing interior for the client, because I think it's the most, you know, romantic part of the story. And I can even lighten this a little bit and make it look like the sun's really hitting there and glowing. So what's cool is if I press on this shadow layer that we just created, I'm going to hold it all by itself, okay, and release it. And just to show you, I want to show you the manipulation within that color that we've just achieved, and how we're putting it to work for us, and, you know, instead of it being a mistake. So now if I tap and hold on that check box again, everything will come back, okay? And so I have got my daytime, you could call it my daytime situation. I think I might even go into that shadow a little more and just completely take it out so that you can see as much as possible back here. And that, just doing that reminds me that the other side of the roof would also throw a shadow. So I could just add that by hand and take that, so the sun, you know, the sun would be coming from the back side too, right? So I thought, whoa, that's a nice little bonus, you know. And there's also something annoying. I don't like the bottom panels of the garage being so violet, so I'm going to scrub the shadow out of that a little bit and just make a second color. And then, okay, so now you know I'm not going to let you off easy, because this wouldn't be iPad drawing if it didn't say to you, we're going to help you get the job even better than people with a digital image, because the how quick it is to do some really fun things. Now it's close to the holidays, right? So these people, I'm trying to sell them a story. Their family's going to be coming home. It's going to be warm and inviting. So I need to do a Twilight view, okay? So some of you may have seen our videos about Twilight views. We have literally a 3 minutes to like absolutely bring this baby home and make our partners so happy. So we are going to make a Twilight rendering, and you say, how are we going to do that? We only have 2.5 minutes. And here's how we do it. We go to the very top of the layer stack, but we're going to stay under the margin, right? And we're going to add a layer. And it just so happens that we have this useful purple, gray violet. God forbid I should call it purple. We have this gray violet already picked, right? And we know that multiply has this really magical effect, right? So we're not going to wait to apply multiply. We're just going to proactively apply multiply in layer 21, okay? And so everything's locked and loaded, and this is where I always get a little bit excited because I know it's coming, and you guys, you'll learn this in the next 2 minutes. So now I'm going to tap on this layer, and I'm going to hit fill, and there's the beginning of Twilight. In some ways it just looks like daytime, right? But so I'm just going to go and make it a little darker, right? And I'll go darker. I want it to really be the sense of daylight. I kind of like the you know, I could go to a different world of color, but I'm going to sort of stick in the blue violet, because remember that the blue violet is helping me sell this beautiful glow from the inside, okay? So I think I might even want to go darker, right? Because I'm about to tell a story, which is welcome home for the holidays, okay? And so to tell that story, what do I need? I need this area to be glowing. I need this area to be glowing. We probably don't have time to put a Christmas tree inside. We could make this area glow inside, make the interior glow a little bit, but also there's a front door over here, So behind the Audi, I want a glow to be spilling out into the courtyard, okay? So one of the first things I'm going to do is I have to do a little strategy, and I'm going to say to myself, well, some of these edges are going to be very distinctive and sort of crisp. First of all, I can go in and turn off the daytime shadow. It's way up here, layer 20, right? Okay, I turn the shadow off. There we go. Okay, so this is Twilight. So I want, this is going to be glowing, this is going to be glowing. So what am I going to do? I'm both going to add extra glow and I'm going to take away from Twilight. So let's start from taking away from Twilight because we don't have a lot of time. So I'll be in that Twilight layer and I'm going to go into the selection tool, and there are certain areas that I know that are going to be very distinctive and completely selected. This goes to our work from largest to smallest theory still, okay? So I'm going to take this out, but I'm going to leave the back sort of, yeah, no, I'm not going to. I'm overthinking it. So I want to make this whole opening sort of glowing with light, okay? And I'm going to come all the way over to this part of the wall and up there. So that's going to be glowing candidate number 1. Glowing candidate number 2 is we're going to come over here and select this rectangle. And I think I'm going to go a little bit lower because I made that mullion a little too chunky. And so that's glowing candidate number 2. In a perfect world, I should probably do this anyway. I should have made this drive-through glowing. Let's do it now. So I'll just add, even though it's black, we're going to do some tricks to fix that. And then over here, this wall is going to glow, but the Audi is going to be in silhouette, all right? So I'm going to actually do this really simple, crude draw around the Audi, right? And I'm not going to spend too much time. And go up over the luggage rack and down and I'm just going to come over, I might as well come over the whole way, because this, the courtyard could potentially be lit by a spotlight or something, and we can always emphasize the front door more. And I'm going to come down, and what I'm preserving is this edge, this silhouetted edge of the studio in the foreground, or of this building in the foreground. And then I'm going to close that loop. Okay, and there's that thing back there. Okay, now what I can do is, remember, I've just selected all this and on top of the Twilight layer. Okay, so I am going to do a 3-finger swipe and pull out. I'm gonna cut and paste those areas, and when it pastes, I don't want you to be alarmed. It has this weird thing of turning it back to opaque because it'll be on a new layer that won't know we want it to be in multiply, but that's all right. You'll see that in a second. So watch what happens. When I tap cut and paste, I get 3 solid color areas, but I can go in and just make that area multiply blend mode again, okay? So I'm at least back to where I was, but now the fun is I can tap that blending mode again, and I can actually operate the opacity. And so this, this is all about quick. This is all about, well, what will be fastest to get me done with this or get me through this meeting, And so that's why the opacity in this case, because we could have come in and drawn layer, but it's much faster to do this. Now, here's the neat thing. We're going to take that same, and this is truly advanced technique, you guys, so forgive me for treating you like future renderers, but I'm going to select this shape. I probably should have did it before. I'm going to select this shape, and I'm going to come back. It doesn't really matter where I am, but I'm going to be above. I guess I could do it anywhere. I'm just going to add a layer. Okay. Now remember that glowing color we've talked about that we liked using. So I can come in here and I could sample it with the eyedropper. I think I'll do that actually. I'm going to go back to the eyedropper over here, and I'm going to sample that glowing color, okay? And now what I'm going to do is on this new layer, I'm going to take the airbrush, and let's see. You know, I don't have to be selected like this again, but let's see what happens. I'm going to take the airbrush, and now I'm going to use the airbrush to make it look like, and I'm just making this up. I'm just adding bounce light that would be typical of the evening, right? Where, especially here, where the light is just going to glow and sort of flood the zone, right? And so I'm not being too heavy-handed, but let's just look at that now. Let's 1, 2, 3. We'll turn this layer off altogether, and you can see, right? Now you can remember, there's a couple of things you can do here. You can say, like, you know what, this Twilight layer is too dark. Let me reduce that, right? So I'll go to my adjustments, and maybe I need, this is the fun. You can start playing, right? And then I can go into these fill areas here. And I was pretty shy about it. I think I'm going to jack up the saturation of those. I'm going to make them glow even more. So here we go, glow, and I can play with the brightness. And, welcome home, right? The family stone. Okay, you guys.
That's pretty fun.
That's everything I know about exterior hybrid rendering, hopefully, which can be applied to absolutely anything. While we're signing off, I'm going to extract one more thing. If I had extra time, I would probably fake this into glowing again, but not to take attention away from the other design. But this is just irresistible, and I'll just do that swipe again. Cut and paste on its own layer. Go to multiply, and then go to transparency, and just whatever. Try and figure out what to do with it. You could add little interior lights, but just it sort of made it sparkle a little bit, a little bit better. If you want to go deeper with hybrid design and rendering, you will find links below to my self-guided courses and my live draw-along workshop. To see more examples of this workflow right now, click here, and I'll see you in the next video.